The sky was the color of ash, and the wind carried the taste of metal. The ground shook every few seconds as distant explosions rolled across the battlefield. Kayla ran with her squad, her boots sinking into the soft dust with every step, her breathing sharp and fast, her long alien hair whipping behind her. The sun was hidden behind thick smoke, making the world dim and red, like it was burning in slow motion. They had been ordered to push forward, to hold the ridge before the enemy could take it. Her people were proud warriors, trained since birth to face death without fear. But even Kayla could feel her heart hammering in her chest as the sound of gunfire and screams came closer. She clutched her rifle, her sharp alien eyes scanning the ground for movement. The wind carried strange echoes. Some were voices, others were mechanical noises from human weapons somewhere far away. She had never trusted humans, and the humans had never trusted her kind. But in this war, they had been forced to fight together against a greater enemy. Still, there were unspoken lines neither side crossed. A sudden flash of light blinded her for a second. Her foot came down, and there was a sharp click. Kayla's eyes widened. She knew that sound. Then the world exploded. The blast threw her into the air, dust and fire swallowing everything. Pain like she had never known tore through her leg, and she hit the ground hard, rolling in the dirt. Her rifle flew from her hands. Her ears rang, drowning out the sounds of battle. When she looked down, her stomach turned. Her right leg was gone from the knee down, blood soaking into the dust. She tried to scream, but the air caught in her throat. Her vision blurred, the world tilting as she reached for the empty space where her leg had been. Her squad stopped for only a second, their faces pale, but they didn't come closer. One of them shouted something in their own language, a warning, or maybe a prayer, before they turned and kept running. They had orders, and a wounded soldier was a burden. Kayla lay in the dirt, the heat from the explosion still burning her skin. Her hands shook as she tried to crawl, leaving a trail of blood. The dust storm grew thicker, hiding shapes and shadows. She thought this was how it would end. Her people would say she died with honor. But all she felt was fear. Then a figure appeared through the smoke, not one of her kind. A human, tall, wearing heavy armor scratched and burned from battle. He ran toward her, the ducking low as bullets cracked through the air. She knew his kind, the medics of the human army. But why was he coming for her? Why risk himself for an alien? He slid to his knees beside her, dropping a large bag in the dirt. His helmet visor was up, revealing dark eyes full of focus and urgency. "Stay with me," he said, his voice deep and steady. Kayla tried to push him away, weakly. Her people didn't use human medicine. They believed it was dangerous, but she could barely keep her eyes open. The man opened his kit, pulling out a strange cylinder. With a hiss, a thick foam sprayed over her wound, sealing it instantly. The burning pain dulled, replaced by a cold numbness. Kayla gasped, her sharp teeth gritting. He worked fast, wrapping her stump in layers of tight bandages. His hands moved with the precision of someone who had done this many times before. The sounds of battle came closer, and more explosions shook the ground. Someone shouted in the alien tongue behind them, and Kayla saw her commander approaching. The commander's eyes narrowed at the sight of the human. "Step away from her," the commander ordered sharply. "This is not your concern." The human didn't even look up. "She's bleeding out," he said. "If I leave her, she dies." The commander growled something about dishonor and contamination. Kayla wanted to speak, to tell them to stop, but her voice was gone. The human ignored the protests, lifting her into his arms with surprising strength. Her world tilted again as he carried her, his armor cold against her skin. The dust storm swallowed them as he ran toward the mobile field hospital. Gunfire followed them, and once, a bullet struck his shoulder armor, making him stagger. But he didn't stop. Through the haze, Kayla felt herself slipping into darkness. Her last sight was his determined face as he shouted for a medic team. Her last thought was confusion. Why would a human save her when her own people wouldn't? Then, the darkness took her. Kayla drifted in and out of darkness. Her body felt heavy, but the cold around her wound kept the burning pain away. When she opened her eyes, she saw strange lights moving above her, shapes of machines and the shadow of the human who had carried her. His armor was marked with dust and blood, but his hands were steady as he worked on some equipment near her bed. The tent around them shook from distant blasts. The war was still raging outside. Her ears caught the voices of her people. Angry, sharp, full of distrust. She turned her head slightly and saw her commander standing at the entrance, arms crossed, his eyes locked on the human medic. "You will step away now," the commander said in their language, his voice like steel. Kella's breathing quickened. She wanted to speak, but her voice was still weak. The human looked up, his eyes calm but firm. "If I stop, she will die within minutes," he said, his tone leaving no space for argument. The alien medic beside the commander shook his head. "We do not use human machines. We do not attach human parts. It is against our honor." The human stepped closer to Kayla, as if shielding her from their words. "This is not about honor," he said. "This is about life." Kayla's heart pounded. She felt the tension between them like a storm ready to break. Her commander stepped forward, his tall frame towering over the human. "If you do this," he warned, "you will not be welcomed among us. You will be seen as a violator of our ways." The human didn't move. His jaw tightened. "My name is Corporal Jack Hayes," he said slowly. "And I don't care about being welcome. I care about keeping her breathing." The alien medic pulled the commander aside. Speaking in a low voice, Kella's vision blurred. But she caught fragments, words about infection, dishonor, and replacement limbs. She understood then. They would rather see her die than live with a synthetic leg. The thought made her chest tighten with fear and anger. Jack placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "You're going to make it," he said quietly. "But we need to move fast." Kayla swallowed, her throat dry. "Why?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He looked at her for a long moment. "Because life is worth saving, no matter what rules try to stop you," he replied. Outside, the blasts grew louder, shaking the tent poles. The alien commander gave his final order. "If you touch her with your machines, you take her away, she will no longer be of our people." Jack didn't answer. Instead, he turned to a small crate and pulled out a sealed package. Inside was a synthetic limb, sleek and metallic, a mix of human and alien engineering. It was not a perfect match for her anatomy, but it was the only thing that could give her a chance to walk again. Kayla stared at it in disbelief. "It will be part of me?" she asked faintly. "Yes," Jack said. "It will be strong, maybe stronger than before, but you have to want to live with it." She hesitated, the words of her people echoing in her mind. The old stories that said warriors with artificial limbs were cursed, but she saw the determination in Jack's eyes, and for a moment she felt a flicker of trust. She gave the smallest nod. That was all Jack needed. He pushed the alien medics aside and began preparing the surgery table, his movements fast and precise. The alien commander turned away in disgust, leaving the tent without another word. Jack worked under dim lights, attaching strange cables to machines that hummed softly. He cleaned the wound carefully, removing damaged tissue, his face set in deep concentration. Kayla bit down on a cloth to keep from crying out as the cold instruments touched her skin. The smell of disinfectant mixed with the distant scent of smoke from the battlefield. He explained each step in a calm voice, telling her how the synthetic connectors would link with her nerves, how the metal would move like muscle. Her mind was half lost in the haze of pain and exhaustion, but his words anchored her. At one point, she whispered, "Why help me when my own people would not?" Jack didn't look up from his work. "Because you're here, and you need help," he said simply. "That's reason enough." Outside, voices shouted and the ground shook again. One of the human soldiers stuck his head inside. "Hayes, we've got incoming fire. You've got 5 minutes." Jack nodded sharply, his hands moving faster, sealing the synthetic limb into place, locking it with magnetic clamps. Kayla felt a strange sensation, not pain. But wait, a new part of her body waking up. Her breathing became shallow, her vision narrowing to a tunnel. Jack leaned over her, checking her vitals. "Stay with me, Kayla," he said firmly. Her name sounded strange in his human voice, but it gave her strength to keep her eyes open. The buzzes up her eyes open. Tent shuddered as something exploded nearby, and sand and dust rained from the ceiling. Jack tightened the final connection, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's done," he said. "You're going to live." But Kayla's body was too weak to hold on. She felt the darkness rising again, pulling her under. The last thing she saw was Jack's determined face as alarms blared and medics rushed around them. Then she was gone again, swallowed by the void. Kayla floated in a strange place between sleep and waking. There was no pain now, only a heavy weight where her leg used to be. She heard voices, muffled at first, then sharper, metal clinking, machines humming, and the steady rhythm of her own. Breathing, when she opened her eyes, the world was blurred. The tent ceiling was dimly lit. Shadows moving across it, her gaze shifted. And she saw Jack sitting beside her bed, his armor partly removed, his hands busy cleaning tools. There were dark lines under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in days. "You're awake," he said quietly, noticing her movement. Kayla's mouth felt dry, but she managed to whisper, "What happened?" He leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "You made it through the surgery," he replied. "The leg is on, and it's working." She turned her head slightly, her heart racing. The blanket covered her lower body, but she could feel something different, a cold, solid weight. Jack reached down and pulled the blanket back just enough for her to see. Her breath caught. The leg was sleek and metallic, silver with dark plating, glowing faintly at the joints. It didn't look like her flesh, yet it didn't look like a human limb either. It was something in between. Kayla stared at it, unsure if she should feel relief or horror. "It's unnatural," she murmured. Jack's eyes softened. "It's alive in its own way," he said. "It will learn to move with you. It will respond like your own leg. But it's stronger." Her fingers trembled as she reached to touch it. The surface was smooth and cold, but she could feel a faint vibration, like a heartbeat. Jack explained how it connected directly to her nerves, how her thoughts would control it as if it were truly hers. "It will take time," he said. "But soon, you won't think about it. You'll just move." She looked away, her chest tight. "My people will never accept this," she said bitterly. Jack didn't argue. "They don't have to accept it," he replied. "You only need to survive." The tent rustled as the wind outside picked up, carrying the sound of distant gunfire. Jack reached into his kit and pulled out a small device. "This is a calibrator," he said. "We're going to make your new leg listen to you." He set it beside the bed and adjusted the settings. A soft hum filled the air, and Kayla felt the leg twitch. Her eyes widened. "Try thinking about moving your foot," he said. She focused, imagining her missing limb. And to her shock, the synthetic foot flexed. It was strange, but there was no delay. It moved as if it had always been part of her. A small smile touched Jack's lips. "See? You're already ahead of most patients." But Kayla's smile faded quickly. "This makes me different," she said quietly. "Not one of them anymore." Jack leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "Different doesn't mean less," he said. "Sometimes it means stronger." Their moment was interrupted by a loud crash outside. One of the human medics rushed in. "We've got enemy movement heading this way." Jack's face hardened. He stood, grabbing his rifle, then glanced at Kayla. "Stay here, keep practicing, I'll be back," he said. But as he moved toward the exit, Kayla's voice stopped him. "Why risk so much for me?" she asked, her tone a mix of confusion and gratitude. Jack paused, then turned halfway back. "Because I couldn't stand by and watch someone be abandoned," he said, before disappearing into the storm outside. Kayla lay back, staring at the leg. She lifted it slowly, feeling the muscles, or rather, the synthetic equivalents, respond. It was heavy, but not in a way that slowed her. It felt powerful, and for the first time, she wondered if maybe this gift, unwanted as it was, could change more than just her life. Minutes turned into hours, and the sounds of battle faded to silence. When Jack finally returned, his armor carried new scratches, and his expression was tired but calm. He set his rifle down and sat beside her again. "You'll be on your feet tomorrow," he said. "We'll start with walking, then running." Kayla raised an eyebrow. "Running?" She repeated. Jack smirked slightly. "You'll see," he said. That leg was built for more than walking. She didn't answer, but deep inside, a spark of curiosity lit up. Perhaps this strange human stubbornness had given her more than just survival. Perhaps he had given her a weapon. The night outside grew darker, but inside the tent, Kayla's thoughts were restless. She flexed the new leg again and again, listening to the faint hum of its power. Somewhere in the distance, the war raged on, but for Kayla, the real battle had only just begun. The first light of dawn slipped through the seams of the medical tent. It painted the dusty air in pale gold, soft and quiet compared to the chaos of the night before. Kayla stirred, her eyes slowly opening. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then she felt the cold weight at the end of her body, and memory came rushing back. She sat up slowly, her muscles stiff. The blanket slid away, revealing the metallic leg in the soft morning light. It looked even stranger now, its surface reflecting the weak sunlight. The dark plates along the shin gleamed faintly, and the faint hum of its systems whispered at the edge of her hearing. Her fingers brushed over the joint at the knee, feeling where metal met flesh. The skin around the connection was wrapped in clean bandages, but beneath she knew there was no going back. Her people's stories called such fusions a mark of shame. Yet here it was, a part of her now. Jack entered the tent just then, carrying a metal tray with a ration pack and a steaming cup. "Morning," he said with a small nod. Kayla looked up at him, her eyes sharp but uncertain. "You did this?" "To me," she said, her voice low but steady. Jack set the tray down beside her bed. "I saved your life," he replied calmly, "and gave you a chance to walk again." She looked back at the leg, her expression unreadable. "I didn't ask for this," she murmured. "No," Jack said, sitting on the chair beside her. "You didn't ask for a mine to take your leg either." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of machines outside. Finally, Kayla swung her legs over the side of the bed. "I need to see if it works," she said. Jack reached out as if to steady her, but she shook her head. "I'll stand," she said firmly. Her first attempt was shaky. The new leg felt heavier than she expected, but it responded when she willed it to move. Her foot met the ground with a solid thud. The weight evenly balanced. She took one step, then another, each movement slow and deliberate. Jack watched closely, ready to catch her if she fell. She wobbled on the third step but didn't fall. When she turned back toward him, there was a spark of pride in her eyes. "It moves like it's part of me," she admitted reluctantly. "I told you," Jack said with a faint smile. "It just needed you to trust it." Before Kayla could answer, a shadow fell over the tent entrance. Her commander stood there, his face stern, his arms folded across his chest. He glanced at her leg, then at Jack. "So it's true," he said coldly. "You've bound yourself to human metal." Kayla stood straighter, her jaw tightening. "I bound myself to life," she said, her voice sharp. The commander's eyes narrowed. "You've shamed our traditions," he said. "No warrior with such a mark can stand in our front lines." Jack's shoulders tensed, but Kayla raised her hand to stop him from speaking. "Then I will fight in my own way," she said. The commander looked between them for a moment, then turned and walked away without another word. The silence after his departure felt heavier than before. Jack finally spoke. "They can't see it yet, but one day they'll understand." Kayla shook her head. "I don't care if they understand," she said. "I just need to prove to myself that I can still fight." Jack's eyes met hers, and in that moment, an unspoken agreement passed between them. They would train, they would fight, and she would be ready for whatever came next. The rest of the morning was spent in movement. Jack guided her through simple exercises, standing, stepping, crouching, even short bursts of walking. At first she struggled with balance, but each time the leg adapted faster, its sensors learning her rhythm. By midday, she could walk without leaning on anything, but every step reminded her of the stares she had felt earlier from passing soldiers. Some human, some alien, some curious, others filled with judgment. She ignored them, focusing on the sound of her own breathing and the hum of the leg. When the sun dipped lower, the war's voice returned. Gunfire echoed from the eastern ridge. Shouts carried through the camp. Jack paused their training, his expression changing. "That's close," he said. Kella's eyes narrowed. "Then let's see what this leg can really do," she replied. Jack grabbed his rifle and handed her a spare sidearm. She took it without hesitation. Her people might see her as different now, but she still knew how to fight. As they stepped out of the tent together, the sky was painted in shades of orange and smoke. The enemy was coming again, and Kayla would face them, with steel in her body and fire in her heart. For the first time since the blast, she didn't feel broken. She felt ready. The camp's quiet moments never lasted long. By the time the sun touched the horizon, the distant thud of artillery was already rolling across the valley. The sound grew sharper, closer, and the air trembled with each impact. Soldiers from both human and alien units moved quickly, grabbing weapons and rushing to defensive lines. Kayla stood beside Jack near the supply crates, her new leg planted firmly in the dust. The hum of its servos was steady, almost calm, a reminder that she was not the same as before. Her grip on the sidearm tightened. Jack glanced at her, his voice low but firm. "This isn't training anymore. Stay close to me." Kayla's eyes narrowed. "I can fight," she replied. "Just tell me where to aim." The first enemy shells landed just beyond the ridge, sending a wave of dust and debris into the air. Through the swirling haze, shapes began to appear, tall, armored figures with weapons that glowed faintly. The enemy moved with precision, their steps silent despite the chaos. They were not here to probe the defenses. They were here to crush them. The outer barricade erupted in flashes as the front line opened fire. Kayla and Jack took cover behind a damaged vehicle. Bullets and energy bolts whistled past, the air thick with smoke and heat. Jack leaned out and fired, then ducked back. "Two flanking right," he warned. Kayla moved without hesitation, her new leg propelling her forward faster than she expected. She cleared the cover in a single stride, landing in the path of the advancing enemy. They hesitated for a fraction of a second, enough for her to raise her weapon and fire. The recoil felt different with the synthetic leg anchoring her stance. Steadier, stronger. Two enemies dropped, their glowing weapons falling into the dust. Kayla turned to cover the left flank, but movement to her right caught her eye. A group of her own alien soldiers was pinned down, trapped between rubble and incoming fire. One of them, a soldier who had once sneered at her injury, was bleeding badly. Without thinking, Kayla ran toward them. Her stride was powerful now, each step eating the distance. The leg absorbed the impact of a stray blast that would have shattered bone. She reached the trapped soldiers, dragging the injured one to his feet. "Move," she ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. They stumbled back toward safety. Using the gap she had opened, Jack saw her returning and covered her from a distance, his rifle cutting down two enemies trying to close in. But just as she reached the vehicle again, a deafening roar shook the ground. The enemy had brought something bigger, a walking artillery unit, its cannon swiveling toward the camp. Jack cursed under his breath. "We need to fall back," he said. But Kella's eyes locked on the massive machine. "We can't let that thing through," she replied. Before Jack could stop her, she sprinted forward. The leg's servos whined as she pushed it harder, faster, each stride stronger than the May. Last, she ducked under a blast that scorched the ground behind her. The heat licked at her skin, but she kept moving, reaching the machine's leg. She drew a combat blade and jammed it into the joint. Sparks flew. The machine staggered, its cannons firing wildly into the sky. Kayla used the momentum to leap onto its side. Climbing toward the core, enemy soldiers shouted, firing at her. But the leg gave her the speed to keep moving. She reached the access panel and tore it open, her hands working quickly to overload the machine's power feed. A high-pitched whine filled the air, growing sharper with each second. Kayla jumped clear, just as the machine exploded in a burst of fire and shrapnel. The shockwave knocked her to the ground, her ears ringing through the haze. She saw Jack running toward her, but before he could reach her, a section of a collapsed wall came down, pinning him under rubble. Kayla's heart lurched, ignoring the pain in her own body. She rushed to him. The debris was too heavy for most soldiers, but her synthetic leg dug into the dirt, servos straining. With a cry, she lifted the slab enough for Jack to crawl free. He fell against her, breathing hard. "You're out of your mind," he said between breaths. "Maybe," she replied, helping him back toward cover. "But you're still alive." The enemy lines began to falter, the loss of their heavy unit breaking their advance. Human and alien soldiers pushed forward, forcing them back across the ridge. When the last shot faded, the battlefield was littered with smoke, scorched earth, and the silence of victory, at least for now. Jack leaned on her shoulder as they walked back into camp. Some alien soldiers glanced at her with something new in their eyes, not just suspicion, but respect. Kayla ignored them, her focus on keeping Jack steady. She didn't need their approval. But she could feel the shift. They had seen what she could do. And so had the enemy. The night after the battle was far from quiet. The camp was filled with the groans of the wounded, the hiss of medkits, and the low rumble of repair machines. Kayla sat near the edge of the recovery tent, her synthetic leg stretched out before her, the faint hum of its systems matching the rhythm of her breathing. Jack was in the medical bay across the camp, resting after the rubble had nearly crushed him. She had wanted to stay by his side, but the human doctors insisted he needed space. Still, her thoughts kept returning to him. She remembered the weight of the wall pressing down, the strain in her leg as she pulled him free. Without it, without the metal and wires she had once feared, he might be gone now. The thought made her grip the arm of her chair tighter, before dawn could break. A sharp alarm pierced the camp. Kayla shot to her feet, the leg locking into place with a sharp click. Soldiers rushed past her, their shouts carrying urgency. The enemy had launched a sudden night raid, but this was different. The attackers weren't coming for the whole camp. They had slipped in fast, targeting something or someone specific. Kayla's gut tightened. She pushed through the crowd until she reached the med bay. The door was open, supplies scattered on the ground. Inside, 2 human medics were tied and unconscious, and Jack was gone. Her pulse pounded in her ears. A soldier nearby shouted that a small enemy strike team was retreating toward the canyon with a prisoner. Kayla didn't wait for orders. She grabbed a rifle and sprinted after them, her leg driving her forward in long, powerful strides. The cold night air stung her face as the camp lights fell away behind her. The trail was easy to follow, boot prints in the dust. A few drops of blood. She kept low, her breathing steady, her eyes adjusting to the darkness. Ahead she spotted them. 4 enemy soldiers moving fast. Jack in the middle, his hands bound, a bag over his head. Her fingers tightened around the rifle. She could take a shot, but the risk of hitting Jack was too high. Instead, she moved to flank them, her new leg giving her the speed to leap from rock to rock without sound. She closed the distance until she could hear their voices. They spoke in their own tongue, but she caught enough to know they wanted to interrogate him. Her jaw clenched. They wouldn't get the chance. She waited for the right moment, then lunged from the shadows. Her first shot dropped the rear guard before he could turn. The others spun, shouting. Kayla charged, the servos in her legs surging with power. She slammed into the nearest soldier, sending him sprawling. The one holding Jack tried to drag him away, but Kayla's blade flashed, cutting through his weapon. Jack stumbled free, coughing. Kayla tore the bag from his head, her hands quick and sure. "You came for me?" He rasped, still dazed. "Of course," she said, her tone almost angry. "Now move." The last enemy aimed at them, but Kayla stepped in front of Jack, the blast hitting her shoulder armor and sliding off. She fired back, dropping him in the dirt. The canyon was quiet again except for their breathing. Jack swayed, still weak from whatever they had given him. Kayla slid her arm under his and lifted. "Lean on me," she said, her voice softer now. "You shouldn't have," he began, but she cut him off. "You would have done the same." They made their way back toward the camp, the night air cooling the sweat on her skin. Every step reminded her of how far she had pushed her body. But the leg didn't falter, its hum steady, its grip on the ground unshakable. When the camp came into view, the sentries rushed to meet them. Some stared openly, at her, at the prisoner she had taken down, at the human she had brought back alive. Her commander appeared, his expression unreadable. "You disobeyed orders," he said flatly. Kayla met his gaze without flinching. "I saved a soldier," she replied. "That's what matters." Jack glanced between them, sensing the tension. The commander's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "You fought well," he said at last. "Perhaps. There is honor in survival after all." He turned and walked away, leaving Kayla standing with Jack at her side. The medics pulled him toward the tent, but before they took him inside, Jack looked back at her. "Kayla," he said, his voice low but full of meaning, "I owe you more than my life." She gave a small shake of her head. "No," she said quietly, "we're even now." As the camp settled back into uneasy silence, Kayla returned to her place near the edge of the tents. She sat down, her rifle across her knees, watching. The stars fade into the first pale light of morning. The leg hummed softly, a constant reminder of the path she had chosen. It had saved Jack tonight, just as it had saved her before, and deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The morning after the rescue was quiet, the kind of quiet that made the camp feel almost peaceful, even though everyone knew the war was far from over. Thin smoke curled from the cooking fires, the smell of strong ration coffee mixing with the cold dawn air. Kayla stood near the edge of the camp, watching the horizon where the pale sun was rising through a thin veil of dust. Her synthetic leg gleamed faintly in the light, still carrying the scuffs and scratches from last night's fight. It hummed softly as she shifted her weight, reminding her it was more than just metal. It was a part of her now. For days she had fought against accepting it. But the moment she had dragged Jack from the canyon, she understood. It wasn't a curse. It was a second chance. Footsteps approached from behind, slow but steady. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. Jack came to stand beside her, still wrapped in a bandage across his ribs, his face pale from the injury, but his eyes sharp. "You're up early," he said with a faint smile. Kayla glanced at him. "Couldn't sleep," she replied. "Too much noise in my head." Jack looked out at the horizon with her. "You did more than save my life," he said quietly. "You changed how they see you." She gave a small, dry laugh. "Some of them," she said. "The rest still think I'm unnatural," Jack shrugged. "They can think whatever they want. But they saw what you did." They stood in silence for a moment, the wind carrying faint sounds from the valley beyond, echoes of distant fighting. Kayla finally spoke again, her voice lower. "When I woke up after the mine, I thought my life as a warrior was over," she said. "My people would rather bury me than see me fight like this." Jack turned to face her. "And now?" he asked. She met his gaze, her eyes steady. "Now I know I can fight harder than before," she said, "and I will." Before either of them could say more, a horn sounded from the center of camp. It was the signal for assembly. They walked together toward the gathering area, where both human and alien soldiers were already forming ranks. Kayla noticed more eyes on her than before, but this time, some nodded in respect. Even the alien soldier she had rescued from the rubble gave her a small salute. The commander stepped forward, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Last night, the enemy tried to break our lines. They failed," he said. "They failed because warriors stood their ground. No matter the cost." He turned his gaze toward Kayla. "One of them fought with the strength of two, and brought back one of our allies alive." Kayla felt the weight of the moment. Her people rarely gave public recognition to those they had once shunned. The commander's voice hardened. "Perhaps honor is not only in tradition, but in survival," he said. "Today, we march forward together." The crowd broke into cheers, a mix of human voices and alien calls. Kayla glanced at Jack, who was grinning despite himself. "Not bad for someone they didn't want to save," he said. She smirked. "Not bad for someone they didn't want to fight beside," she replied later. As the cat prepared to move, Jack found her near the armory. He handed her a small, well-kept combat knife. "It's lighter than the standard issue," he said. "Better for close fights." Kayla turned it over in her hands, the blade catching the light. "Why give me this?" she asked. "Because I want you to have something that's yours," Jack said. "Not something the war forced on you." She didn't know what to say to that, so she simply slid the knife into the sheath on her belt as they walked out toward the transports. She realized the bond between them was no longer just about survival. They had seen each other at their weakest, fought for each other at their worst, and neither had turned away. The march began, the soldiers moving in long columns toward the next battlefront. Dust rose under their boots, the air filled with the steady rhythm of many feet moving as one. Kayla walked beside Jack, their pace matched without effort. Now and then, their eyes met, and no words were needed. The road ahead was uncertain. There would be more battles, more dangers, more chances to fall. But Kayla no longer feared them. With her synthetic leg, she had the strength to face anything, and with Jack beside her, she had something worth fighting for. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the barren land, Kayla tightened her grip on the knife he had given her. She could feel the future pressing in, but she welcomed it. The war might break armies, but it had forged something stronger between them, something no enemy could take away. And as they walked into the horizon, human and alien, soldier and medic, survivor and savior, they carried that bond like armor.